Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Daras Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Saneka Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munish Om Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Oyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshione Yela Sambe Dede Malupa Geme Lungi Drupra Chingi Lo Tsoni Sodan Dikdun Shakpe Tse Dingi Namke Yinsu Lekshione Lapchen Tsoni Yonsu Tsopa Dang Chera Nyetun Chamra Chingi Lo Chancho Pargi Nyinsen Tukun Tu Nyu Peme Siudru Lekshione Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Jingi Lo Dagi Lo Na Chola Chokpa Dang Chomin Samjur Ngemba Shiwa Dang Chedan Tumbe Dede Malupa Beme Lungi Drupra Chingi Lo Dorna Tingne Tsera Tamche Dan Techi Pardone Kab Tamche Rese Kyamne Lama Kele Me Tukche Chingi Dala Siksu So Gongyab Drewe Nyamta Dachala Jetsun Lame Tuche Rabgongne Kodan Sunge Nawa Dralme Tu Nyamsu Nyongwe Kesan Tobrasho Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Cheki Pela Longchechi Sadan Lamgi Yente Rab Dorje Change Kopa Nyur Tobo Sho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Pakyuke Sungdan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tön Yerme Chiktu Jingi Lo Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Makyuke Sungdan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tön Yerme Chiktu Jingi Lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Swaha Om munye Soha Sashipu ki choshi meto Tamare rabalinga she Nide gempadi Geshin to mikte ulwarki Drokun nama dashin la Chopar shoyi dam guru ratna mendrala kam niryatayami Sangye chedan soge chanam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dage chushe gibe sonam ki drola penchre sangye druparasho Sangye chedan soge chanam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dage chushe gibe sonam ki Drola pinchra sangye drupar Sho sangye chodan sogi chonam la Jancho pardo dani kyapsu chi Dagi chushe gibe son Sangye drupar sho
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge through the practice of generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo yal haye ke da luda nue chin ke drupa da mi ke nam da drupa kun ke janam chi tsampa tham che ke tu da ge che ten tham che ke tu da ge che ten Buongiorno.
Good morning. Let's imagine someone, or yourself or someone else, who starts cooking, wants to cook the best dish ever for someone else or for a group of people. And he or she does it, you do it with the best of intentions, without any doubt, and maybe even with really, really good ingredients. But unfortunately, this person doesn't know how to cook. So it doesn't matter how good that person's intentions are. I mean, it can happen that the dish doesn't come out well. No? So even though I've spent hours cooking with all my positive motivation, that doesn't determine the outcome. A tasty dish, maybe not even healthy. Maybe I do something thinking that it's the best, but then I end up giving you poison. Recently, I went to Tibet when they were bring when they brought me Tibetan Tibetan tea with milk and lots of butter. Whether it's not about wanting it or not wanting it, I'm lactose intolerant. So when we do something, when we familiarize our body and mind, having the right intentions is extremely important, but we also need to learn how to cook well. Like physical exercise, you want to have a healthy body is important. Wanting to do the exercises, etc. But if you do the exercises badly, I mean, it can happen that I hurt myself more than benefit myself. The same thing can happen with our minds. And Lama Tsongkhapa here, before asking the actual questions, he reminds us the reason why I'm asking these questions is not because I want to make myself important or I want to show others as being lacking or incapable. Not for any of those reasons, but I see people who put a lot of energy into following a spiritual practice, a spiritual path, doing things that just don't work. And no matter how much energy one puts with the best of motivation, if he does something that is not beneficial, the result is not going to work positively. So it's important we need to walk in the right direction. It's not enough just to want to walk or to walk. We need to make sure that we're walking in the right directions. And for that reason, I'm asking these questions so that you can understand if you're going in that right direction or not. And it's very important because sometimes we start with this idea, the supposition, I have the right motivation. So everyone, we're free to do as we want. There's a freedom of religion. We're free. We're free to do as we want. Of course, no doubt about that. Each one is absolutely free to do as they feel, but absolutely no one is free from the consequences of those actions. And it's important to understand that. It's important to understand that there needs to be coherence in our way of training, of acting. Our spiritual path is a path of training. It's a path of transformation. And we act in a certain way to transform our being in a certain direction. But accordingly, depending on how I train, that's how I'm going to transform myself. And it's not about saying this is right and that other tradition is wrong. No, call yourself whatever it is. Lama Tsongkhapa says, it doesn't matter to me how you call yourself, how you dress yourself, how you dress. But what's important is that you are familiarizing yourself in the correct way. And if you're able to answer these questions correctly, if you act accordingly, then I prostrate with body, speech, and mind, and I rejoice for what you're able to do. But if you're not able to answer these questions, then you need to study. Nothing personal, nothing against you, but if you're not able to answer these questions, it just means you need to study and clarify these points. So let's go directly to the text. It's a text that I like very much. I don't want to spend too much time with a long introduction. Let's just pick up where we left off the day before yesterday. As we said before, page 8, these questions that I'm going to ask, these questions that I'm going to present here are not asked with the motivation of pretending to be knowledgeable, wanting to degrade other people, or wanting material gain, respect, or fame. So I'm not asking these questions for mundane reasons or to show that my tradition is better than another. These questions, why am I doing it? It's simply for the following reasons, the following points. The pandit of the Sakya tradition, who was an emanation of Manjushri, in the Treasury of Knowledge says,
takto tsumbe tingzin drupkyans sangye gebe lamle go niktu kewo chokshe chenams lekpar somla kebaten sebene.
Although you are achieving concentration with constant effort, taktu tsempes, sorry, here with the translations it's a little difficult for me. Through a constant effort, you have reached a meditative concentration. It's not that you have achieved concentration with constant effort. No, it's through constant effort you have reached this state of shamatha, single-pointed concentration, where you can keep your mind still on one object without any distraction of or body or mind. Then you have deviated from the path which pleases the victors. You, beings of the Kali Yuga, with the knowledge of satisfaction, think well and follow the learning. With the knowledge of satisfaction, think well and followed a learned being. You, beings of these degenerated times, beings of the Kali Yuga, you're full of satisfactions with the knowledge, but satisfaction understood as, you don't look for more. You don't look for anything beyond that state of concentration. It says, think well and follow someone who can follow you well. You need to follow someone. So what does the Pandit of Sakya, who was one of the most important masters of Tibet, he says, even if with a lot of effort you have been able to achieve a great state of concentration, it doesn't mean that you're on the right path. What's the point here? We transform ourselves with interaction. So this shamatha brings a tremendous amount of benefits, but it depends on what I'm meditating on. I can actually develop a state of single-pointed concentration where my object of meditation is hatred. I can induce a deep state of hate and stay with this state, concentrated on the hatred. So for your process of transformation, it's a horrible thing. Of course, it's positive for your level of concentration, but it's just not enough to develop this single-pointed concentration. So the Pandit of Sakya says that you think it's enough to develop good concentration. Remember that it's not like that. Listen well and reflect. Lek parso means think well. You need to follow someone more learned than you. Find someone who can guide you correctly. And another point of the text says,
mandak sung duk padans shenyang gyabo nigi gyabo nijar tu tago chosum la norwa ta yeba shik duk chins ta yeba shik duk chins te nang ne kan tongni la tagom norwa pung drawer ludrub gi sungtes uma tsawar tongba ni la ta nyenas sherab chung nang pungwar gyurs perna drula sung nyedans ringa lokpar druba shins shinya gyabo ki keba tume sungles tangbor gomgyo rang manorwa nyeba shintu kas shesok ta yeba shik tong shins tetana tse tongse la drowe gomla rayans ningruke shenyang goba namla goba tsewe kune lantes Nyengur tu shuwe tiwa dini ditaros.
And says again, it is greatly emphasized in many texts, such as the thorough classification of the three vows. Here actually, it's not, it's a continuation. It was translated as if it were a continuation, but it's not. It's not a quote. And it says, it is greatly emphasized in many texts, such as the thorough classification of three vows. Furthermore, there is simply a limitless number of people in both India and Tibet who are mistaken with regard to the view, meditation, and conduct. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, along this development of Buddhism in India and then in Tibet, there was an enormous number of people who had a wrong interpretation of things regarding the view or how to apply it to the view and the way of meditating. There are many times there were wrong interpretations. Let's remember something. When I tell you something, what am I telling you? What I was taught or what I understood? What I understood. So for this, I don't share this. I don't really share this, but I mean, I like to analyze and understand, but there is that saying, to trust is good, to not trust is better. So as things are taught, what is taught is the understanding of that person, and that gets handed down, and then is added the next understanding of that other person. It's very similar to the water in the mountains. When you drink water in a stream, we need to make sure of two things. That the water comes from a pure source, like a snow-capped mountain, hoping that there wasn't some kind of toxic cloud. So we want the source to be pure, and then from the glacier to me, along that river, there's no pollution. There are people who have polluted or have added something to the stream. Sometimes we see water that seems very clean, but it's not. I remember once I was a child in Tibet, near the border with India, very high, about 5,000 meters, where Milarepa meditated, and there was the little stream that went by. It looked very clean and beautiful, and I went down to drink, and then and an old Tibetan man just pushed me aside. It's from their old sewage system, but it didn't smell anything. It looked very clean. I didn't know. But it's very important when we drink that water, we see water, we need to make sure that that source, the original source, is clean, and between the source and where we find ourselves, there was no pollution. In the same way, we need to make sure that the original, that the teachings have come from a pure source, from Buddha Shakyamuni, and between Buddha and what I'm studying, what I'm learning, that there's no wrong interpretation. And most of us, we don't have the knowledge or the ability to judge well, to analyze well. But luckily, there are masters who have dedicated their lives also to this, and they're able to put clarity. And this was one of the great works of Lama Tsongkhapa. That's one of the reasons why he's so important. And before him, there were others. We give value to Asanga and Nagarjuna. Behind me, you see the blue window above Akshobhya Mamaki. You see 5 images. I'm not seeing them, but at the center should be, there's Buddha Vajradhara, who is Buddha Shakyamuni in the aspect of how he transmitted Tantra. Then we have to the right Maitreya Buddha, and to the right Manjushri Buddha. There were 2 disciples of Buddha. Manjushri has a stupa on his head, and Manjushri has a sword. Near Manjushri to my left, there's Nagarjuna, and near to Maitreya on my right, there is Asanga, and they are the 2 masters, the 2 most important masters in India, who clarified many of Buddha's teachings. And then afterwards, very often when you take teachings, you try to make sure, that where I'm drinking that water from, that source has come through them, because they did a very important job of discernment and clarification. But the reality is this. I mean, for most of us, at the beginning of our path, it's not that important, this level of discernment, because we're really working on a more superficial level. But when we want to deepen more, then it becomes extremely important to have this level of clarity. And then they were 2 most important, and then there were 6 masters that came after them. They're called Gen Druk Chönyi, the 6 ornaments and the 2 excellences, the six teachers, masters represented, where there's that first window right to the right. There's the Buddha's image with the masters around him. There's Buddha, then there's Manjushri, and Maitreya, and then there are 8 masters without looking at the ones above, very high above. There's Lama Tsongkhapa, the first Dalai Lama, and also Panchen Losche Chogyal Gyaltsen. But those 6 masters are there. And Nagarjuna is always to the left, and Asanga always to the right, because the left represents the profound view and also feminine energy, and the right shows the extended view, the part of method and the masculine energy. So Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us here that it's extremely important that we have a pure line. Otherwise, we can drink this water with the best of intentions, but then we're just going to get sick if it's not pure. But it depends, as I said before, it really depends on the level in which we practice. And then it says, specifically among them, if the view and the meditation regarding emptiness are mistaken, one will be ruined because Nagarjuna in his fundamental wisdom says, this is the root of emptiness. One of the main texts, one of the 6 texts where Nagarjuna explains the emptiness, Sawat one book written by an Italian physicist, Helgoland. He cites Nagarjuna, and so quantic physics is very, very similar. And this is one of the main texts on the correct view of reality. Here, Lama Tsongkhapa says it depends on how you practice. If you're developing compassion, if we're talking about looking at our emotions or a more coherent conduct, the level of danger and error is less. The danger of error is the danger is heightened when we're talking about emptiness. And in this fundamental wisdom, it says, if the view of emptiness is failed, if it's erroneous, those with small wisdom will be ruined. For instance, it's like failing in catching a snake and the perverse achievement of knowledge and so forth. This means, what does that mean? It's a strange translation. It's like trying to eliminate black magic. Let's imagine you try to catch a snake, and if you don't know how to do it well, what would happen? Instead of eliminating the problem, he bites you and you die. If you try to eliminate black magic and you don't know how to do it, then you get affected by this black magic. So you try to meditate on emptiness to eliminate your ignorance, but if you do it in the wrong way, then you end up meditating on an erroneous view, maybe going for the extreme of nihilism or eternalism, and then it's even more harmful. So if you meditate on the correct view of reality, on how phenomenon exists and the nature of things, and you meditate in a wrong way, you end up familiarizing yourself with an incoherent reality. So among all the aspects of the teachings, we need to make we need to be extra careful when we're talking about emptiness, because if we're talking about practicing the 6 perfections, generosity or love, or facing our own mental defilements, most of the teachings are very similar and there's less chance for mistake. But where there were many different different interpretations and wrong interpretations, where great masters had to somehow readjust their view, and it had to do with their view regarding emptiness and the correct view of reality. And this is really the heart of the work that Lama Tsongkhapa did. Those who are at the beginning of the path, one would think, oh, this doesn't really touch me much, but as you move along the path, it becomes fundamental. And it says, and in the discourses of many Indian and Tibetan scholars, an infinite number of passages such as, it's very difficult to find something that is not mistaken to meditate on from the beginning, is seen or heard. So therefore, for those who have the courage in meditation, which leads their own life to an empty end.
Tetana.
Tetana.
Ok, prima leggo tutto, poi rivedo la
I'm just going to read everything and then we'll look at the translation. So, therefore, for those who have the courage in meditation, which leads their own life to an empty end, and who want to lead others to such a destiny, I, with the motivation of mercy, compassion, write the following questions as a request. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, those who meditate in the wrong way and treat and teach others the wrong meditations, you're ruining your lives and the lives of others. I'm very sorry for that, and because of feeling sorry for that, I'm going to ask these questions. And we talked about this the other day. Very often, having correct questions is more important than having the answer, because sometimes we have the answer to things and we think that the answer, we think it's the answer, but it's actually wrong. They're incoherent. So it's very, very important for us to ask questions to ourselves, ask ourselves questions, see if we have a coherent conduct. And Lama Tsongkhapa had an incredible level of knowledge. There's a proverb that says in Tibetan, if you don't know something, ask Buten. If you're not sure about something, ask Tsongkhapa. Buten Tamche Khepa was a master who wrote about everything, more than 100 volumes. He spent his life, the last part of his life, just writing and writing and writing. Actually, he had he made a stupa, this monument, the stupa, and he would do the circumambulation of the stupa, and in every of the four directions, the cardinal points, he would lead a scribe, the secretary, and as he would circumambulate the stupa, he would say one sentence to that secretary, to that scribe. So he was writing, dictating 4 different books at the same time, and that's how he was able. I mean, it wasn't an artificial intelligence. I mean, he was able to write so much. But it's also said that when you have doubts about something, if you want to have clarity about something, then you should ask Tsongkhapa, because Lama Tsongkhapa wrote 18 volumes, but he writes in a way where he leaves no space for doubt. He's incredibly clear. He makes reference to the Buddha's sutras, Nagarjuna's sutras, other Indian scholars. He explains and he brings all the possible hypothetical doubts and the answers to that. Once I was reading a text of Lama Tsongkhapa, and there's a half a page that explains the concept, and then 8 pages to prove that concept and refute hypothetical, also citing all the Buddha's sutras and other texts, and also through a logical analysis. And there was once I was reading and I just thought, oh no, I just trust you, and I go right to the last page. But there's a whole process of hypothetical doubts, and this is like the art of debate. So it's like this, and someone might think this, that, or the other. And if you think this, it's not like this because of this, that, and the other. I mean, it's extremely detailed. Lama Tsongkhapa had this ability of being totally clear. So what we're going to start now we're going to start with the first question. So Lama Tsongkhapa takes the essence of Buddha's teachings on this path, and he says, I'm going to ask you questions so that you can reflect on the essential points of this path to see if you're walking on the right path or not. And the first time I answered the first time I read this book, I had I had this following problem in the first question. He gives the question and he gives his own answer, but then later he doesn't give the answer. So I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm reflecting on this, but how can I be sure that I have reached the right conclusion? But luckily, the answers were written about 300 years later in very beautiful verses, answered by Panchen Losang Chukyi Gyaltsen. So we're going to read together the questions and the answers. So I write these following questions as a request. So you observe, see the path that you are walking. See if it's coherent. On the next page, page 11, we have the beginning of the text of the answers. These are actually, it's at the beginning of the text, the noble-minded answers by Panchen Losang Chukyi Gyaltsen. So actually put these two texts together. So he writes, Namo Guru Manju Goshaye, I prostrate to Guru.
Nyempra thakpe pelte dus, goente tsewe samune, triwe solgi dömpetens, chidar söbe namchogi, kube talmo charte söls.
Namo Guru Manju Goshaya. I prostrate to Guru Manjushri, you who display the exalted wisdom of all the Buddhas by way of saffron color and dance, are pleasantly known as the pervasive Lord of the 100 lineages of the noble mind. To you, the glorious one, I bow down. And this is a verse of praise to Lama Tsongkhapa. You, Lord, with mercy and compassion, exhorted to us to answer your questions, to answer your indirect questions regarding profound points, and I answer whatever my intelligence can bear, with my two palms joined respectfully at my heart. So let's go to the first question. The first question that he asks is, what is the reason for rolling the important points of all the 84,000 bundles of teachings, which the Buddha taught in general, into one? If we were to give one reason, what's the reason? So why did Buddha teach everything that he taught? It's said that he gave 84,000 antidotes, different teachings. It says that we have 84,000 mental defilements, to which Buddha taught 84,000 antidotes. If we take all the teachings of Buddhas, there are about 102 volumes, an enormous quantity of sutras, of philosophy and tantra. But if we were to give one reason, why did he teach what he taught, and add, what's the same reason why all masters who came after him, why did they continue to transmit and continue teaching? Why? The other day, we asked a question. Why are we here? we said that at the basis, I mean, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy and not suffer. We want to be well. But in a sustainable, sustainable, long-lasting way. We could say that the reason why Buddha taught everything that he taught is for that same reason. Or do we want to say that he wanted to be recognized as the founder of a new religion? Or because Buddha wanted to have many disciples? Or because Buddha, we can invent anything. I mean, the real reason why, the only reason why the Buddha taught and transmitted everything that he did, and the only reason why even we too, why there's meaning of following what he said. It's not, the question is not just why did he teach, but the same question, turning it around, we can say, what's the reason why I follow teachings and try to understand and read? I mean, why do I do that? The only real reason is because I want to be a good Buddhist, because I want to be an expert in Buddhist philosophy. My master once said to me, if you want to just gather up knowledge, collect knowledge without putting it into practice, then it's better to go study something else and you can find a good job. Just a side note, when I arrived the first time, when I went to India to study the Dharma, the first meeting that I had with one of my most important masters, whose name was Geshe Thupten Rinchen. My father is there; he's already laughing. And Geshe Thupten Rinchen, he left his body a few years ago. My father and I, we were very enthusiastic. This great monastery. Geshe Thupten Rinchen looks at us and says, "Why are you here? Better go back home." And he was not joking. What do you think? You come here, you stay 1 year, 2 years, and then you go back home and you lose 2 years of school, and then you go back to your life in Brazil, and you have neither the education of Brazil nor the education here. You think it's easy what we're doing here? He was really hard. I remember we walked away from that meeting with the really stomach very tight, and my father was angry. Why? You know, we came here and look how he greeted us, and it created a positive side effect because he was supposed to be my main teacher, but there was this initial tension. So Lama Ganchen said, "No, I'll send you to another master." And Geshe Thupten Rinchen was always yelling. I mean, he was very good friends with this other master. They would call him Master Buddha because he was so kind with everyone. Geshe Chinle Topte. He would even give little candies to those who didn't study well, and Geshe Thupten Rinchen maybe would he would raise his hands, let's say. So this created a positive collateral side effect, that I also had a good relationship with this other master. I was able to have this positive relationship. But it's important to ask ourselves why we're here, because when you start a path that's not easy, if we don't have clarity as to why we're here and what's in front of us, at the first difficulties, we just drop everything. And when we ask ourselves, what is the objective to getting close to Buddhist teachings and those who transmitted after, why did Buddha teach what he taught? And this was done to help us obtain what we've been looking for infinite number of lives, and it's what we all want. We all want a long-lasting, sustainable state of peace and joy. And it's, to me, it's an important objective. It's not to learn a philosophy. It's not to have a job or become a good Buddhist or whatever it is. It's not to have a good rebirth or to go to heaven or avoid suffering of the hell realms. And I'm not making reference to other Buddhism, other religions. Even within Buddhism, this is valid. The reason is to reach a sustainable peace and joy, and get completely out of suffering. And here is his own answer. Freeing sentient beings from this great ocean of samsaric suffering would be the first purpose. The first reason why Buddha transmitted what he transmitted is to help sentient beings get out of suffering, this great ocean of samsaric suffering, this great ocean of samsara. Here we have a small problem, and we need to resolve this before we go on with the text. We can't understand this if we don't understand what samsara is. If Buddha taught everything he taught to help beings get out of samsara, what is samsara? We can make two analogies. Three. Let's imagine that we have an illness, and the sickness in itself, as we said the day before yesterday, is a state of imbalance. And according to Tibetan medicine, sickness is described as an imbalance among the three humors of wind, bile, and phlegm. So we have a state of sickness where the body is imbalanced. And let's remember that if the body is imbalanced, our mind inevitably is also imbalanced, and vice versa. So body and mind are always together. So this state, this psychophysical state of imbalance, is the sickness. And then we have moments where this imbalance shows symptoms. Because we have the symptoms of the sickness that are manifest, and other times where those same symptoms are not manifest, as if we didn't have that sickness. And if we concentrated only on eliminating symptoms, and we don't concentrate on eliminating this imbalance, or bring back a balance, what's our tendency? That state of imbalance remains, and we have more and more these moments without symptoms, and then with symptoms, this constant roller coaster. Because what happens in our body when we take medicine or we do things to take the symptom away, but we don't take away the sickness itself, then the symptoms come back after a while. And it's not a question about if they'll come back or not. I mean, if it's not a question of about where I go or or what I do. I mean, because the conditions can spark the symptoms, but they're not the actual causes. The actual cause is the sickness itself. This is the first analogy. The other two, let's imagine a seesaw.
In italiano io sempre faccio un po' di fatica perché c'è l'altalena, quando si dice altalena ci sono due tipi.
In Italian, the altalena, there are two games where there's the seesaw. No, that's a swing, and he doesn't mean the swing. He means this. Yes, it's a seesaw. So in Italian, sometimes it's called two different names, but it's a seesaw. In Portuguese, we have balança e gangorra, which is a swing and a seesaw. You've understood. You have the image of a seesaw. So when we're on a seesaw, we go up, and when we go up, inevitably, after we're up, we need to go down, and then when we're down, then inevitably we're going to go back up. This is part of the game. And when we're up, and when we feel good, we have this joy, we feel physically and mentally well, we're up. And when we're down, it's when we have these moments of malaise and suffering and sadness, anxiety, fear, pain, etc., etc. The staying up are the things that we do that help us feel good, but don't sustain that state of well-being. Like pleasure, for example, when we have a sensation, a feeling of pleasure, physical, like a sensory pleasure, when we're able to obtain our object of desire, I mean, it brings us a state of well-being, doesn't it? But is it sustainable? In reality, no. When we're down in this state of suffering, which is similar to when the symptom of the sickness is manifest, it's called this suffering of suffering. It's this feeling of suffering. When we have a state without symptoms, but the sickness is still present, or when we're up on the seesaw, here Buddha calls this the suffering of change. These are things that are pleasurable, but at the same, they're of the nature of suffering. They're not able to sustain a long-lasting happiness either. When we're in a state of suffering, when the seesaw is down, how do we try to get out of suffering? By getting rid of its causes, understanding deeply its dynamics, trying to bring a deep antidote to eliminate the cause, or do we do something to eliminate the symptoms and make us feel better? So in other words, going right to the point, what happens is we try to get out of suffering, the suffering of suffering, with the suffering of change. Let me give you an example of suffering of change. I'm thirsty. If I'm thirsty, what do? I drink water. That's absolutely normal thing to do. But when I drink water, I feel good. And I go on drinking water. The more water I drink, the better I feel, right? After how much water does that stop working? After third glass of water? A liter, 2 liters? When I keep on drinking water, that feeling of pleasure, what happens to it? It diminishes more and more until it becomes suffering. And it's the same thing for everything that has to do with our sensory pleasures. In other terms, wherever there's a pleasure that's based on this process of dopamine, after the state of pleasure, there's a void that's created. Chemically speaking, as is very, very clearly explained, can be very clearly explained, and this is the suffering of change. There's things that make us feel good, but they're not able to sustain a state of happiness and well-being, and our tendency is to want to get out of the suffering of suffering by taking refuge in the suffering of change. So when the seesaw's down, I want to bring it up. When it's up, I don't want it to go down. And in my whole life, I spend my time up and down. When the real problem is being on the seesaw, one needs to get off this seesaw. And the ideal effort would be when I'm down to get off of the seesaw, because as long as I'm on it, I'm just going to go up and down. When I have moments of where the sickness of pain or the pain or sickness manifests, I shouldn't try to eliminate the symptom, but try to eliminate the cause. I mean, pain is not the problem. I mean, the pain is showing us that there's something wrong. So pain and the symptom is the suffering of suffering, and trying to eliminate the symptom is the suffering of change, and the sickness itself is the all-pervasive suffering. It's the seesaw. Imagine that there's something that stinks. You know, it's something manifest. That's the suffering of suffering. What do? We cover it up. You know, we spray perfume on it. That's the suffering of change. Oh, okay, good. I don't smell that stink anymore. But after a while, the effect of the perfume goes away, and the bad smell comes back, and the suffering comes back too. But the stinky thing, that's the all-pervasive suffering. It is the body and mind that is polluted by mental defilements, ignorance, selfishness, aversion, anger, resentment, attachment, dissatisfaction, and all the derivatives, jealousy, envy, etc., together with the actions that we do with this karmic force that we have generated in the past through based on these negativities. When we talk about karma, it's one of the few words in Buddhist teachings. We use Sanskrit, but it would actually be a good case to use the literal translation. Karma means action, and karmic action is the strength, the force of these actions. Today I'm living the results of the actions that I've done in the past. This is karma, without getting into many details. It's not some kind of condemnation, or it's in this present moment I take with me the inertia of the actions that I've done in the past that I need to face. And at the same time, I face this present moment through my ignorance, my jealousy and fear and anxiety and all my mental defilements. And through that, I generate suffering. So our selves polluted by mental defilements and the karmic force of the past. This is called samsara, and this is the all-permeating suffering. So samsara is not a place. We can't. When we say, "Oh, we need to be free of samsara," we need to get free. We need to eliminate this place. I've heard people say, like, going to a disco that's a samsaric place, and the gompa is not. But if I come to the gompa and recite mantra to show everyone that I'm the best practitioner here, that's very samsaric. If I go to the disco, like Lama did once. He used to go to Rimini, actually. There was this disco, and I went and did self-healing in this disco at night, in the middle of the night. Disco, at a certain point, the music stops, and self-healing. They started self-healing. Lama Ganchen's doing self-healing in front of everyone. He did also an opening of a heavy metal festival too.
Per dire, Rinpoche andava dappertutto, quindi non è che per dove sei determina se la tua azione è un'azione cosiddetta samsarica o meno. Samsara è questo ciclo di veleni mentali, azione e risultati che sono sofferenza. Più avanti nel testo entrerà in tanti dettagli su questo. Okay? Perciò l'obiettivo dell'insegnamento di Buddha qual è?
So the objective of Buddha's teachings is to free beings from their mental defilements and the actions done with that and the results. So along this path, the objective is to find a sustainable peace. And when we look at this question, turn it around for us. I mean, why Buddha taught, that's between him and him. But why do I try to receive these teachings and follow this path? That has to do with me. And the reason why Buddha transmitted and the reason why I follow teachings and come into contact with this path, ideally, they should be for the same reason. So what's the reason? To get out of this cycle of suffering, the so-called samsara. This is the real reason why we're here. And sometimes, there's this danger that after a while, the objective is not about getting out of one's own suffering, but it's about belonging to a group, having a conduct that is socially acceptable and respected. Because if we lived in a context where Buddhism is the main religion, and I don't follow Buddhism well, and my parents get angry, and my neighbors look down on me, then I go and I follow and I listen, because I have to. Sometimes we can get into a certain context, and we try to have a conduct that is that sustains an idealized image that should be respected within that context. For example, I think we've all experienced, I think also already during our adolescence, or maybe even before, where we've tried to act differently in a different context. So with my friends, you act in one way, and then you're in another context at school with your teacher, and you act differently, and then with your parents, and then you act even differently there. And even as an adult, you're at work, you show certain aspects, and in other contexts, you act differently, because we want to be accepted, we want to participate, we want to be loved, we want to belong. And sometimes one gets into a context where when following Buddha's teachings is the right thing to do, and I want to also belong to this context. Obviously, it's much better to be a good Buddhist, to be accepted, than to go out and do stupid things. In the end, it's a positive result, but we can lose sight of the real reason. So for ourselves, let's remember that this has to do with ourselves. This is not a process that one should go through to judge others. So here, I'm in front of Dharma teachings, in front of a book, a Dharma book, a moment of meditation or the practice, or to recite a mantra, to do anything that has to do with Buddhist teachings or the path. Why am I doing it? This is the first question. And the truth is that very often the most sincere answer is, I don't know.
Molto spesso facciamo le cose presi da un'inerzia.
Very often we do things just taken by inertia.
Faccio perché mi sento bene.
I do it because I like it. I feel good because I've been doing it for a while now. And so it's important for us to reconnect with our motivation and remind ourselves why we're here.
Andiamo avanti col testo.
Let's go on with the text.
Qua Tsongkhapa
Because here, Lama Tsongkhapa goes on and explains
dele tarten nyerang gi nyangde su mi tungar cheba teins dorna korde gi lerim gi galnes tar zogbe sange tobar cheba yimbenas tei nang tuma dube damnga tumas dubunge damnga la sis tena dinam gi ngoshi dans ngonro le tsamba tiwa gibani lengshios tei työnyang rang gi gyui tento kalnas diintes ne embar lu changbar santes lo nang to chokte lekbar sambetses kangna nga ngonche thoma mebe korwe melting dir dunga gi suksir dit samba thugyuntu nyongwa rang rik gi druba dita gyurduglas tha ditabu nesu tengne rang mikewa shik chine chagos tetar machenas nga ningro nyambe nyongwa langwa kalme sukse tsorwatabu shik kewe tabla tangbor be gotes tetabu shintu kas dela nyongwa makena korwa le tarpe tab samo lame chitsam tenchi gomekyans ngartars kyamte gi chudan sumbar drotes perna chu tungdo mena tungwe tsolwa mi chebar deba shinos tei gomluk yang ta korwa di mi kewara che go nyambes dongtsu gi tukpo teni maindes dini shinto gek cheshins chu chungwe sos.
So let's go back to the answer by Lama Tsongkhapa. Freeing sentient beings from this great ocean of samsaric suffering would be the first purpose. Additionally, liberation, keeping them from falling into the nirvana of the hearers and solitary realizers would be the second purpose. This is something much more detailed. Falling into nirvana seems like it's contradictory. Now, but what happens is, along the path of spiritual growth, it's said that there are two possible levels. The first level, where one has a very, very strong determination to get out of one's suffering and is able to eliminate one's own ignorance, but without developing the great love for others. And one reaches this first level of nirvana that one should get rid of, because one stays in a kind of neutral state. Because the first objective is to get rid of a suffering, but the second objective is to help others to follow this path, not just for themselves, but on the basis of deep and sincere altruism and love for others. There'll be more details ahead. In summary, allowing sentient beings to cross gradually from both samsara and limited nirvana and to attain the completely enlightened state is the target. Therefore, what instruction is there that is not included in this answer? So the main objective, first of all, is to see that we're in samsara, recognize one's own samsara, and having recognized one's own samsara, at that point understand that it's not enough to get out of samsara, but I need to help others avoid and get out of their cycle of suffering. So I develop my qualities for the benefit of others, to help them. So to their maximum potential, that would be the ultimate purpose. Allowing sentient beings to cross-graduate attain the completely enlightened state is the ultimate target. Hence, the questions that are asked regarding the actual practice and the preliminary practices, which are the contents of those teachings, are the basis of discussion. The meaning of those teachings is also to be stored in one's own mental continuum as in the following way, or rather, these teachings are not only to take us out of samsara and we develop altruism for the benefit of all beings, but they help us to direct ourselves in this way. How can we do it? And Lama Tsongkhapa says, when we reflect well with our body upright and our mind turned inward in an isolated place, we affirm that we ourselves have experienced such painful suffering in the past as in the present, and on this site of samsara without beginning. Let's remember this, the site of samsara is a metaphor. This samsara is an inner state of being. It's not somewhere we go. So Lama Tsongkhapa says we stay in a quiet place free from interferences. We sitting upright, we start breathing and we reflect. We observe this fact that we find ourselves in this cycle of suffering. Using analogy of before, there's the moments of symptoms and suffering, moments where there aren't the symptoms, but as long as there is, as long as the sickness is present, the suffering will come. And for as long as I can remember, I've been in this state and I don't want it anymore. This is our starting point. So now I should act by any means from right now not to be born here in such a place. So without any kind of restriction, I don't want to be in this place. I want to be cured from this sickness. I don't want this psychophysical state of being. It's not a question of where one is reborn physically. Then it's necessary first to strive in the method of generating a strong feeling similar to kidney pain, with a vivid emotion, thinking, if I do not enact thus, I will cause my heart to rot. This is wrong. Just a minute. I've got to open up the text here in my. So here, it's very simple actually. It says, I need to observe and recognize my sickness, my state of samsara. And as long as I don't see myself as being in samsara, I won't develop the desire to get out of samsara. And it needs to be like stopping like a strong pain. I don't know if anyone here has had a strong gallstone. It's never happened to me, but I've been close to people who've had it, and apparently it's extremely painful. And what happens? I mean, when that comes, one wants that pain to stop. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this, I have this pain, but I need to watch this last episode, and and then I can do this and that. No, and then I'll take care of this kidney pain. When one has that gallstone, one wants to eliminate it completely. So he says, if we don't, this ninkur tube rimpe, it's going to cause my heart to rot. If I don't do this from the in Tibetan, it's from the bone of my heart, from the deepest part of my heart. So I want from the deepest part of my being, if we don't develop that, then we'll never be able to put the necessary effort in this. Another analogy, if we're in a prison, for example, what's the first thing necessary to get to get out of prison? First of all, we need to know that we are in prison, and then we need to develop the strong desire to get out of prison. I remember that beautiful film, The Shawshank Redemption, where there was that boy who wanted to get out and had his whole plan is to escape, and he just dug little by little, and years and years and years later was able to escape with a tremendous amount of effort. But what allowed that constancy? A total determination to want to get out. If one says, "Oh yeah, I'm in prison," so if someone says, "Okay, yeah, I'm in prison, but I like the soup on Tuesdays, and I have a friend here now," if I create a comfort zone within that suffering, I'll never put effort to get out. Our problem is then when the seesaw is up, we forget that it also goes down. Sometimes I hear when people are suffering, they say, "Oh, I can't spend my life like this." And when they're happy, they say, "I can spend the rest of my life like this." Neither one nor the other is going to happen. But when I'm up, or when I have these moments where I'm not feeling the symptoms and I don't have the awareness that I am still sick, and as long as I'm sick, those symptoms are going to manifest, I'll never put effort into curing this sickness. So this first step is to develop this strong awareness of where I am, the state of being, and the strong desire to change, to get out of this. But there's something very important to add to getting out of this. Actually, it's not simply getting out. It's reaching something else. It's like saying, getting out of darkness is going towards the light, finding oneself in the light. So this desire is not only I don't want to suffer. It's the desire I want to be well. I want to be well and balanced and in harmony with myself and with others, regardless of where I am and with whom I am and where I find myself. In other words, the same feeling, we can say, it's about falling in love with inner peace. All the rest, okay, if, work is important, my family is important, health is important, yes, do this, that, and the other, everything's fine. But at the basis of everything, the most important thing is that I want to reach a deep, deep state of peace so that I can help others do the same. It's a question of falling in love with this feeling, because as long as there isn't this passion for inner peace, we won't put in the effort to reach it. As long as we don't have this desire to get out, to be free from this strong suffering. Give this to Lama.
nyonga ramga kalme sukserwa tabus shik kewe tabla tangbor begotes tambor begotes begotes tetabu shinto kas ed è comunque molto difficile
And it's very difficult to develop this strong, strong determination. We have moments where we feel it, but then the seesaw goes up and we think, okay, great. So we need to go back and remind ourselves, ask ourselves what we want. And the path is followed with joy. But if I'm sick, I need to remind myself that I need to eliminate the causes of the sickness. And also in the moments where my sickness is not manifest, or the symptoms are not manifest, talking to different doctor friends, one of their greatest frustrations is the patient comes, they go to the doctor, oh, I'm not well here and there, and the doctor says, yes, you have this sickness, you need to stop eating this, and you should do like this, and take this medicine, oh, at least 3 months, okay? After 2 or 3 weeks, maybe the symptoms disappear. Maybe take the medicine for another week, but I'm fine. And we stop the treatment, and we start eating as we were eating before and doing the things we were doing before, and then the symptoms come back because the treatment shouldn't be done only when the symptoms are present. The most important moment of the treatment is when the symptoms are no longer there, because at that point the strength of that treatment is not to eliminate the symptoms but to create the balance that was missing. But our tendency is just we focus on eliminating the symptoms. At home or at work, at a certain point, there's conflict. Has this ever happened to anybody? Okay. So some kind of reference point we have. So there's conflict. What do we do? Okay. So we try to resolve the conflict. And that conflict passes, but because we're able to talk it over, do something pleasant together, that tension passes. Is our tendency to stop the conflict or create harmony? In the sense, do I understand what those causes of that conflict, just to make sure that it doesn't happen again? That symptom, that symptoms that comes from something deeper, do I try to understand that? Or do we just, pass over it, and then after time, it comes back again. Some kind of conflict comes back again. So our tendency is just to get back up on the seesaw because we like it. We like being up on the seesaw, but then we go down again. But I tell you that getting off the seesaw is much more beautiful. So getting off the seesaw is not just about not wanting to suffer. Getting off the seesaw is wanting a long-lasting, sustainable state of peace and joy. And it's a really important step for us to think about this. Here in Tibetan it says, so it means from the depth of my heart. This is an experience that comes from the depth of my heart. Like wanting to eliminate this kidney pain.
Fare una cosa del genere è estremamente difficile.
So it says to do such a thing is extremely difficult. So having this passion to get out of samsara, this awareness. I mean, he doesn't want to discourage us in the first question, but he's saying it's not because it's at the beginning that then it should be forgotten. It just doesn't come from one day to the next. It's something that needs to be cultivated. If we did not gain any experience in this matter of acting in order not to be born this was added by the translator. It says, if we did not gain any experience in this matter of acting in order not to be born again in the samsaric world, no, it's experience in wanting to get out of samsara. No matter how profound a method to free us from samsara is taught by a lama, and you indeed understand, it would be similar to a previous illustration of water on melting ice. I mean, if we have ice and we write a poem on ice and the ice melts, what happens to that poem? It disappears. If we're given marvelous teachings, but we don't have the deep wish to get out of samsaric suffering and develop ourselves so we can help others do the same. Those beautiful teachings that we listen to is similar to writing a poem on ice. So for example, it's like the case when someone does not have the desire to drink water. He would remain sitting without putting effort into drinking it. So no matter how thirsty I am, if I don't connect quenching my thirst with water, I'm not going to put any effort into looking for water. If I have a strong pain, for example, and there's medicine in front of me, but I don't understand it, I don't recognize it as medicine, I'll never put effort into taking that medicine. So if we don't want to do something, we'll never do it. That first point is understanding what we want. Direct our energy well. This is the first step. The mode of that meditation is also not the fact that one is able to remain seated and firm, thinking, I need to make sure that I will not be born in this samsara. That would be quite a big obstacle and have little impact. Let's read Panchen Lodchen Chökyi Gyaltsen's answer.
상계 니바 루드기스 담보르 응원바 퇴베체 치니 네바르 렉중와 강치르 응원바 퇴 토페 림기 네바르 렉바 옴스 셰베 된도 닥기 쿰스.
Panchen Lodchen Chökyi Gyaltsen says the aim of the victor's Buddha, the Buddha is called the victor because he had hit victory over his own mental defilements, ignorance, and so forth. The aim of the victor's intention of teaching the 84,000 volumes of Dharma is, as the second Buddha, Nagarjuna, commented. Nagarjuna is also called often the second Buddha. First, the Dharma was taught the Dharma was taught to obtain the high status, and later the definitive goodness. So, in other words, to get out of samsara, and the definitive goodness would be for the benefit. Oh, here I made a mistake. Sorry. First. First, the Dharma was taught for the high status, or to obtain the high status, to reach balance within samsara. The high status means, or one is good enough, still has ignorance and attachment, is still on the seesaw, but he knows how to stay up a little bit, so he's not down too much. So we're still in this cycle of samsara. We have ignorance and etc. But we're able to avoid some non-virtuous conduct, live more or less in a healthy, positive way. So it's like a sustainable happiness. So the high status was that, and the definitive goodness would be this sustainable happiness. So it's interesting. It's not just about getting out of samsara. There's a lot we can do to find balance. So it's like saying, I haven't gotten out of prison, but I'm living it as well as I can. I can relate. I relate well to others, etc. Remember, it's an analogy when we talk about the prison. The point is, how can I, with my selfishness and my ignorance and my anger, how can I try to live in the most balanced and harmonious way possible? That's the first step. The second is getting out completely of ignorance, and with the development of wisdom, and our selfishness by the development of altruism. For someone who attains the rebirth of high status, this, from my point of view, it's a wrong way of understanding the taste, that the high status has to do with a kind of a rebirth. It has to do with a status where one isn't in constant suffering, or regardless of one's rebirth or not. Then there will be the definitive goodness for him gradually, this sustainable happiness. This is the meaning of what I have understood, comprehended. So, just quickly, so sitting down and saying, I need to get out of samsara is not enough, because just repeating what was said, oh, I need to get out of samsara, it's just not enough. We need to develop this passion. We need to remember and remind ourselves deeply in a non-conceptual way, our entire being, to develop this wish, to develop peace with myself and with others, and to not be constantly taken by my mental defilements and constantly up and down. I want to live in harmony with myself and with others, and I want to help others also develop this harmony within themselves. And this is my top priority more than anything else. And let's remember that one thing doesn't take away something else. Wanting to develop a deep state of harmony and peace and getting out of samsara doesn't take away any desire to want to have a happy home life or to have a good career, but it's a desire that permeates everything else. A little bit like the 6th Dalai Lama, Sayang Gyatso, said, if I desired enlightenment as much as I desire women, I'd already be enlightened. Which means this feeling that we're talking about is a passion. It's not a conceptual idea. So if you leave it on a conceptual level, that could even become an obstacle. It needs to be something that we feel from deep inside and not something that we just understand. Is that clear? So, when we take a Dharma text in our hands, or we listen to teachings, when we sit down to meditate or recite a mantra, or we pick up our mala or go to a holy place, we do anything related to our spiritual practice. So why are we doing it? What's the deeper reason? Let's go back to this question. let's remember that the, the reason why this was all taught and transmitted, and the reason that I'm here is because I want to get out of suffering, of samsara, this samsaric suffering, and I want to cultivate myself so I can help others do it. And even though it doesn't come spontaneously to me, this desire is sincere. So I connect again and again and again. And the stronger this feeling is, as Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us, it's not immediate. The stronger this feeling is, the more we'll be able to integrate we'll be able to integrate it into every aspect of our lives. And it'll go beyond just belonging. And belonging is wonderful, but it's not enough. I don't want to say that it's wrong to have an identity of wanting to be Buddhist or being part of this community. I mean, that's part of the method. That's not the objective. And if we lose the objective, the rest becomes empty, like religion without spirituality. If we lose this objective, everything we do after, a good part becomes like religion without spirituality, just religion for religion's sake. And it's what Lama Tsongkhapa said at the beginning, says, I'm sorry to see someone who dedicates his entire life but is missing those essential points, and is not only wasting time, but it's actually hurting himself, going in the wrong direction. Because in the spiritual context, the religious context, how possible is it that one can actually nourish one's own ego and arrogance? And it's possible that happens. That's why in the Lojong teachings it said, be careful to not transform the gods into demons, and don't eat poisoned food. So transforming gods into demons is when we use a spiritual practice that is supposed to take away our arrogance and our selfishness, and instead we use that practice and we become even more proud and feeling superior. Obviously, better to nourish oneself thinking I'm so compassionate, I'm so generous, etc., than something else. But instead, eating poisonous food is by doing a dharma practice, something that should help me develop my love and compassion, or diminish my selfishness or anger or ignorance. But instead, because there's attachment, because there's ignorance, there's something, it's actually increasing this negativities. Because food should nourish me, but if I put poison in it, then I'm going to kill myself. So let's remember this first question just tells us so much already. And I repeat, it's something that, for me, it's fundamentally important, as I've said many times. We're not here to be Buddhists. I consider myself Buddhist, and I have tremendous respect for the path, but our objective is not to be Buddhist or to belong to an organization or a religion. This is not what we need. The world doesn't need this. The world needs people with more love and wisdom, more presence, more awareness. And so do we for ourselves. So its first question asks us again and again, why am I here? What's the objective. What is it that I want truly? And little by little, we redirect ourselves. So I invite you to reflect on this first question. It's a reflection that requires a whole lifetime. It's gradual. One enters into it more and more. And my experience is that the more we go on, the more subtle and deeper aspects come out. It's like falling in love with someone. There's some also the people who fall in love with the Dharma, which is wonderful, and then there's moment of crisis, which is fundamental, because then one can ask oneself, what am I doing? What's my motivation? That's a fundamental part. And I see someone in crisis, I think, oh, good. It's tiresome, yes. But it's that crisis that allows us to surpass that superficial level and go deeper. So we need to ask ourselves, what am I doing here? Why am I here? When we make prostrations, why are we making prostrations? Is it a formality? Who cares? There's a reason behind such formality. I make prostrations, chaksel in Tibetan, and we translate as prostration, means I ask. Tsel. Chak is seal. It means also hand, but it also means seal. The non-duality it means. The ultimate seal is non-duality, the non-dual state between method, between wisdom and method, and the absolute and the this is when we're making prostrations, we are asking, we are requesting the blessings. We're saying we want to reach this non-dual state. And so let's remember this, and let's get back to our objective. And it's not for nothing that at the beginning of every practice, every teaching, meditation, at the beginning, there's the generation of the motivation. Because it's not enough to generate it once. We need to remember it again and again. And then once one is totally in love, one doesn't need to remember it constantly, because it's constant. We're going to stop here. Tomorrow I won't be here, as I said yesterday, because tomorrow morning I need to go to Holland to participate in a funeral where someone who has upheld the center, has supported the center for many, many years, and has left his body. So it's my duty to praise, to be there with this person, as a person, also on behalf of the center. So I'm leaving at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll be back for the dinner and our end of the year teachings and dinner. I'll be there for the end of the year dinner. So, but this first question, we could just take it. We need extra time. I mean, even if we said we'll see you next December, it maybe wouldn't be enough time.
Drowe munsel takto ne gyur che kewa kunto yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche ching Sadan lamge yönte rabzone, dorje change kopa nyurtob, sho animo dele tsendele, nime kuyan delekşin, ninsen takto delekpe, kuncho sumke chingi lob, kuncho sumke ngodrubutsol, kuncho sumke trashishun. Lame Sangye Rinpoche, Kyopa Lame Tamche Rinpoche, Trimba Lame Gendur, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chepa. Buon appetito.
Have a good lunch. Thank you, everyone.